If I had have known these 7 key lessons when I had my first awakening, it would have saved me years of pain, suffering, shame, and judgment as the spiritual awakening went on. Because what nobody tells you when you first start out on this path, this pathless path, is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It can be completely disorienting, destabilizing, and it can shake you to the very core of the foundation of who you thought you were all along. And that's the whole point of it. So these 7 insights I sat down the other day and wrote down, and they're the very fundamental points that I wish I knew at the start of my awakening journey, because they would have helped me cut through the fear and endless doubt that I faced throughout the last 7 or 8 years. Hi, my name's Todd. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, I like to talk about all things consciousness, non-duality, and the hidden mechanics of reality so you can be more empowered on your own awakening journey. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 keys and the 7 key lessons that I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years and that I've seen others struggle with who I talk to on calls, so you can have a little bit more peace of mind and relief while you're going through your own intense initiation process in an awakening journey. Because whenever I talk to someone on a call and I run through these lessons with them, in almost every single occasion, I can see the almost immediate relief wash over their face, because it finally breaks the cycle and the looping turmoil of them constantly judging themselves and feeling guilt and shame as if they're doing something wrong, when what they're experiencing on an awakening journey not only is typical, but it's actually an important part of the process. And just before we get started, if you're interested in these kind of topics, hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date for new releases and also the free gifts and guides that I provide sometimes along with these videos. And I want to say the key lesson number 1 is probably one of the most important, because it's probably one of the biggest sticking points that when I talk to people, it's clear that they have this sticking point because they judge it oftentimes as if they're doing something wrong, and it's something that shouldn't be happening. And so maybe you can relate to this one. So the destabilization phase of a spiritual awakening is that point that usually, not always, but usually does come right after that first awakening or first glimpse that maybe you're not who you thought you were, and maybe there's something more to this reality than we once thought. It's that clear seeing, maybe it's a glimpse, maybe it's satori, but it's that clear seeing into your true nature. And then what happens is what's often described as ego death, or the beginning of the dissolution of our identity or who we thought we were, the idea of being the separate self and the character that we thought we were for our entire lives. And what this really is, the mechanics of what it really is all of those beliefs and distortions that we've bought into that have sat below the surface of our conscious awareness for sometimes years, decades, sometimes our entire lives, that sit deep within the unconscious or the subconscious. They begin to start to rise to the surface of our conscious awareness. And this oftentimes looks like complete chaos. It can look like repeating or obsessive fears coming to the surface, fears of dying, fears of survival, fears of betrayal, abandonment. They almost always come down to the fear of being annihilated. And these are the deepest fears that are intertwined, ingrained, and inbuilt into the survival mechanism of the ego or the identification of being the separate self. And because they're so ingrained in identity, they also cause the most emotional turmoil and most physiological reaction. And when this process is playing out, it's very, very easy and it's almost logical to believe that there's something very, very wrong with you. However, the idea couldn't be further from the truth. The idea is all of these fears and subconscious beliefs bought into in illusion have been sitting there all along below the surface, below your conscious awareness, and now they're becoming conscious, they're coming to the surface, they're coming to see the light of day, the light of your true awareness, so that they can be cleared and rectified and realigned back into the truth of who you really are. So not only is there nothing wrong with you, but this is a good sign that you're transforming. Okay, now we get to the second core lesson that I wish I knew at the start of my awakening. And this is for people who may have been on the path for either months or a few years now already, who have experienced the phenomenon of cycling back to fears and core beliefs that you thought you'd already dealt with. And it can be extremely frustrating having thought we already dealt with a core fear or root belief that we have already been through, we've already experienced the negative emotions of, we've even done the inner work on it, and it fades for a while, and we fully believe it's complete, that cycle's complete, we've dealt with the belief. And then for it only to come back again some months later, or even a year later, or 2 years later. And the reason for this, again, is quite simple and mechanical, and yet we oftentimes get frustrated into the fact that it's re-arisen, it's looped back again. We have to deal with it seemingly again. But what this is it's peeling back the layers. So in a lot of instances during an awakening journey, the most deeply seated and root beliefs, our core wounds as it's sometimes called, they take peeling back of some layers to actually get to the root. And what this looks like is cycles. So we cycle back to the same old beliefs and same old patterns that we thought we had dealt with, only to peel back another layer and then another layer and another layer again. And every time we're peeling back the layer, we're actually dissolving that energy membrane that's surrounding the core distortion or the core root of that belief. And every time we cycle back to it, we're gaining deeper insight into it, deeper clarity, so we can see through it more and more, until eventually, when it's seen through completely, it almost turns transparent, and it's like the bottom falls out from underneath it. It was seen that it's never actually been there at all. It's only the root of an energy or a belief. So the second thing that I wish I knew at the start of my awakening is simply that cycling back to the same patterns after some months or some years, even if it takes a while, even if it takes years to completely see through and completely transmute the energy of distortion from that core belief, that is perfectly normal, and that is part of the process, because the extent and the magnitude of energy and distorted energy that's sitting there would be too much for the system to be able to process in one go. And really, this leads me on to the third thing that I wish I knew at the beginning of my awakening journey, is about the nature of chaos and destruction. The first two lessons I spoke about really are about the nature of destabilization and uprooting and transmuting core beliefs, core distortions that we've bought into as the illusion. And so that can create a very chaotic environment. Sometimes our lives can be completely upheaved. People can fall away. We can lose jobs, businesses, financial resource, even homes. Chaos can play a large part in shaking up the fundamental illusion of what we've bought into. And so the third thing I wish I knew is, as uncomfortable as it is, chaos clears the way. If you wanted to build a new house, you cannot build a new house while the old one is still standing. It needs to be fully demolished and cleared. The soil needs to be leveled so a new foundation can be set. And so you could analogize that the chaos and destruction of demolishing an old building so the new can be built is similar to demolishing the old beliefs, the old identity structure that we bought onto for our entire lives up until now needs to be cleared, so the foundation of who we really are can be seen and it can be reestablished in our lived experience. And as I said, the chaos can disrupt personal relationships. So the fourth thing I wish I knew at the start of my awakening was that not everyone is going to come with you. And that's okay. What you'll find, or what you probably will find, is there's going to be some relationships that just don't feel resonant anymore after a period of time. People who just aren't on the same path as you. It's totally fine. That's their chosen journey, and you're not here to save everyone. So as you get deeper on a spiritual awakening and you start awakening to more and more of who you really are, what you might feel like, especially with those closest to you, especially with family members, is you might feel like you need to be the one to save them. You need to be the one to help them awaken. Some of them may be responsive to it, and some of them may not. The ones who aren't, they're on their own path. Their soul's chosen their own journey for them. It's perfectly okay. And what I would want to know at the start of my awakening about this and how to deal with it is actually just to simply let the chips fall where they may. If people end up drifting out of your life because there's just no resonance anymore and there's too much friction, then that's the way it's meant to be, and you can just let them, because new people will come in that resonate more with the truth of who you really are, who are on the same path or similar path as what you're on, and they're going to become fulfilling relationships. The fifth thing is very fundamental to the process or the awakening process or journey in itself. And this is really about not getting hung up or buying in to anything that the physical mind wants to convince you of. So I would want to know a few things. And first of all, the North Star. The North Star of every spiritual awakening, really, and it's been quoted in many of the texts, even biblical quotes, even Zen quotes, philosophical quotes, and it is know thyself. So if there's any North Star of a spiritual awakening, I would want to keep it in my mind that the fundamental goal is to know thyself, or at least know what you're not. And so resist physical mind, the ego mind's urge to set up camp anywhere where you think you've got all the answers, where you think you've reached the place that you were meant to and that you can stop here. And that includes getting caught up in techniques, getting caught up in tools, especially when it comes to spirituality, and definitely don't take on any sort of spiritual identity or any identity at all, because to truly know thyself is to realize that the true self can't be described, can't be defined, and certainly can't be built any identity around. And especially the deeper you go into this, the deeper into a spiritual awakening journey you go, if there's still any trace of believing in the illusion of being the separate self, the physical mind will throw up more subtle tricks to try and make you believe that you've arrived. So don't listen to it. And the second to last thing I wish I knew is just don't resist the discomfort. As difficult as it may be, just resting in discomfort and being able to be aware of the discomfort and allowing it to play out is actually one of the best things you can do for it to process and transmute. By being able to transmute from the I am awareness, or the core awareness of who you really are, acts like a light shining on darkness, acts like a laser transmuting distortion. So being able to sit in discomfort and not resist, just accept and allow and observe and become aware of is one of the best things I could ever have done in allowing it to play out and transmute back into the light. And the final thing, and maybe one of the most important, is at the end of the day, this is the soul's playground. It's all just play. It's all a play of light. It's all a show. It's all an interactive movie. And the soul chose this at the soul level for the purpose of play, joyful, and fun. So even though it can be so turbulent at times and the feelings and the emotions are very real, very, very uncomfortable, there are also magical moments as well. There are magical discoveries as that joyfulness and that innate play and frequency of play comes online more and more. So try to enjoy it. So those are the 7 core things and lessons that I wish I knew at the start of my spiritual awakening that would have made it a little bit easier. And if you're still looping in fears and want to know how to clear those fears out of the body and out of the mind, I've created a free step-by-step guide that dozens of people all around the world now have been downloading and using to map out your core distortions, core fears. And there's a technique in there so you can start learning how to clear that out of your system for good in a very proactive way. So I've included the link to that free gift. That's my gift to you just for being here. That'll be in the first line of the description below. Click that link, download it for free, and start mapping out your core fears and clearing them today. Thanks for watching.